I will start the Special Services Committee. Number 1 is approval of December 21st Special Services meeting. Do I have a motion?
Make motion.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Enrollment update?
The enrollment numbers, they're pretty consistent with last month. I think we're up 8 students in the district. 8 students, yeah, overall. But the breakdown is there for you in your pack there.
Does I know we've all had it in our packet. Did anybody have a chance to review it? Does anybody have any questions? If not, I will move on to bus data. Oh, no, I'm sorry, attendance data.
Attendance, similarly, we're pretty consistent with percentages of attendance, and that's broken down by grade level and by school for you.
Yes, Mr. Bounce?
I know we haven't had any this year, but can you just, if we have a snow day and we do go remote, can you just give us the attendance for remote?
Yes, sure.
I'm just curious what the attendance would be, how many would sign on and be in school for remote, that's all. I'm hoping we don't have any.
Can we also get, I think in the past we've gotten a breakdown of the last few years to see where we're at with attendance. Could we potentially get that for next month as well, just to look at it?
Like the last few, the
The-
same kind of data? Or
Yeah, just over the last few years, so however you want to make it so that it's easy to read. You could even do elementary, middle, and high school instead of breaking it down at each school level, but just to see what the attendance is. And we've had a really big push to get the attendance up to where it needs to be because kids that aren't in school aren't learning. So I think it'd be nice to see how that's working, so. Yes.
I think that data is going to be very skewed if we're looking back the last several years because of COVID.
Yeah, so what would your suggestion just be?
The last 2, considering.
21, 22, and 22, 23.
See, I was only thinking 5 years because I think we need to look at that data of when kids weren't there to see when every year we have an update on how kids are doing with reading and math scores.
Yeah.
And I think when we have the data with COVID and then we have the data where like kids were struggling, I think it just, I think
Struggling pre-COVID or post-COVID?
both, I think.
Because there's just a lot of different factors that are going to come into play, so it's going to be very skewed data. It's going to be kind of hard to analyze that because of those COVID years.
And I don't disagree, but I just think kids had to go through COVID, so there's going to be a learning curve and there's going to be kids that are really behind. So how do we, it's going to be skewed either way, so how do we look at that data in a non-skewed way? Because they're still recapping, even just academics, their mental health and well-being, and they don't want to be in school anymore. So that's the only reason I wanted to include it, but we don't have to if we don't.
I don't think it's a bad idea. I think we just have to be mindful of the fact that it's
Correct. So if you do the data for the last few years, and if you put like an asterisk by when it was COVID, so we know that it's kind of skewed data, that would be helpful. Any other discussions? All right, so we will go on to bus data.
Similar bus numbers, if you have any questions. let me know.
Have there been any concerns on the buses lately?
In what way? Just in general?
Over busing too many students. I know in the past it was questions about kids, just too many kids being on the bus.
I think the
overpopulation.
bus numbers are okay right now. Occasionally we get a request from a parent to, for a bus inside a walk zone or something that we're unable to accommodate, but we work with that family and, share
But
the
if we're
policies
able
with
to
us.
accommodate it, we
Yeah.
do whenever possible.
Yeah.
Any discussion from the board? Seeing none, we will move on to Intro to Special Education, Sarah Camus.
All right. Hi, everyone. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Sarah Camus. I'm the District Coordinator of Special Education for Rochester School District. So I think it was in December, Mrs. Stokes had asked for me to come in and present a little bit about special education as just an intro to sort of what it is. Again, there's lots of information to it, so this is sort of just a intro to it, the information, but if you have more questions, we can always go into those later on. So I like to start off almost every presentation that I do with something really positive and just really an image. So this one just says, every student can learn, just not in the same way or on the same day. So really, when we're thinking about special ed, we know that every student can learn, and just the way that we go about it and work with those students. So when we're thinking about special ed and with everything, we're thinking about what it is for our district. So we think about our mission and we think about our vision for the district. So I'm not going to read through everything unless you guys want me to, but there's our mission and vision. I wanted just to include a quick little slide for who the leadership team is within the district for special education. So we have 2 IEP team facilitator positions, and one has been open since August. So we haven't had that position held, but the other one is held by Jen Anderson. We are very fortunate to have 2 amazing out-of-district coordinators, Jen Doherty and Dan, and then we have preschool special ed coordinator who's been with the district for quite a while, Stacy King.
She's amazing.
She is, yeah. And then we have the new middle school special ed coordinator, Beth Leno, and the high school special education coordinator is Kate Stimmel. And then we have Lisa Sear and Jocelyn who are supporting the district at the SAU level for administrative assistance.
Yep.
How do these positions connect with you? I don't understand the
Yeah.
tree, I guess.
Yeah, so I oversee all those positions and I work closely with everybody here in all of our elementary schools. In a moment, we're going to talk a little bit about our elementary schools. And then as we get onto it, we have about 911 identified students within our district. And we've had 250 referrals this year, so that's lots of special ed meetings. So I'm working with all those buildings, helping with procedures, policies, with following laws, with help if they need any help also, so.
Did that answer your question?
No, and then I just wonder, what is an out-of-district coordinator?
So an out-district coordinator case manages for our district, and then those students that go out of district for many reasons. It could be for an IEP team decision. It could be students that are in foster care. DHHS is working with them. Court system has placed them outside. And then this year we also have them working with our charter schools. And we work currently with 2 charter schools and have a good number of students that are attending those schools. So they help oversee that because Rochester in the end is a district of liability for those students. So,
Kelly, did you have a question?
yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the open position,
Yeah.
have you had any luck with applicants?
We have not, no. So, which is really tough, just because it is a good position and it helps all of our schools.
So Jen's doing like double duty or?
Yeah, so Jen's doing that part of it. I've taken on a lot of that too, just with where I transitioned into this role too. And then we have lots of time for us to be able to meet, to be able to coordinate, to see what needs to happen, so.
So with that position being open, like the computer IT people came back and said they wanted to switch a position. I know that there's some of your administrative assistants that are part-time. Is there a way to make that full-time until this position, so it takes the load off of things?
So I think that was something that, and I don't know if that was something we had talked about looking to see about increasing some of those positions that are the part-time for special ed admin assistants within the district. And we could look at that part of it, but I don't know if it's already sort of put into the budget. I think it's the high school one where.
I think that was the one, I couldn't remember, I thought it was the high school.
The
but I
high
couldn't
school,
remember.
the middle school, that one is full-time already. I know the high school isn't, so I didn't know if that one was, but I could look into that and see.
I mean, I just think if it's needed and
Yeah.
we can't hire pairs, we have a position that's open.
Yeah,
I would hate for people, you know what I mean, if Jen's doing the job of 2 and we could get that administrative assistance to take over some of the roles
yeah.
or some of the duties, I mean, we wouldn't want somebody to get burnt out because we can't hire things.
Yeah, no, and a lot of the IEP team facilitator it's an LEA designation kind of thing, so it's
Yeah.
one's attending meetings, it's one's helping with district procedures, helping clarify. This year, we've done a lot of different trainings for teachers and admin and everybody else, so on January 23rd, we did a presentation for special ed in general for all of our teachers, just talking about what special ed was, looking at referrals, looking at all of that. And then we also had a session going for accommodations and modifications within a classroom. So, and I know that if you're not in an education world, I might be speaking a different language right now, and we'll cover some of them as we go. Maybe not all today, but I'm trying to get an idea by looking at your faces of where I am with everything, so. But yeah, we'll get an idea for that and be able to move forward. But we are doing lots of training. A lot of it is going into the schools, supporting during IEP meetings, just the IEP team and the school in general. So, but I can look into that part of it, Mrs. Stokes.
Thank you.
So this position, or this slide here talks about school staff. So the other one was talking about district level and sort of how we work and coordinate there. This one here is that we have 13 principals, special education coordinators, and or assistant principals who are designated as LEA representatives. So they would be able to go into meetings and be able to allocate funds and everything that goes along with an IEP meeting. Down below are our current positions that we have filled. So I wanted to break it out into the districts. So the district says it's the district staff that we have, and then the contracted ones are ones that we contract with different companies for. So we have all of our positions filled either through contracted or through district staff, except for our top two for our special ed teachers and paraprofessionals. But we are not alone with looking to hire for those positions. It's a very difficult field right now in special ed, so it's difficult to find people for those roles.
So the bottom three, the BCBA, the RBTs, and the
Yeah.
psychologists, can we not hire them within the district? So we had to contract out?
Yeah.
Do we have open positions for them if somebody wanted to apply?
So right now, we don't have it for this school year because we had to then allocate those funds to be able to cover those contracted ones. But we have not had BCBA as district staff in the past, just because it's very difficult for us to be able to find BCBAs in general. Right now, we're working with Constellations and Bill White Company, who we've worked with for the past 13 or 14 years. So we're working with them for the BCBAs. And then for the next part, for the RBTs, so that's the registered behavior technicians. Those are holding technically like para positions, they're behavior consultants that are overseen by BCBAs. So we'd have to have BCBAs in order to oversee them. And then school psychologists, we've tried for years. I know a few years ago, we were able to have 3 within our district, then that started to go down. But it's like that in many different districts right now because there's not many school psychologists out there. So I know I've been working with Dr. Bryant, trying to think about different ways that we could do and look forward for getting school psychologists and other professionals in our district.
So since it's budget time, can we get a breakdown of the Bill White and like how much we're spending on those last 3? Because you're right, if a registered behavior technician works in our district, they have to be supervised by a BCBA. So you'd have to get a BCBA in, but I guess my thing is when you're contracting out, it's probably more expensive.
It is, yeah.
So if we could get a breakdown of that and then maybe have that discussion with personnel about putting it out there, because again, if you get one BCBA and you could get a few RBTs and then you're not having to contract out.
Yeah.
So maybe send that discussion to personnel, or we'll get a breakdown first and then.
I could get the
have that discussion.
breakdown. So it would be Bill White and Constellations.
Yeah.
Because Constellations, Bill White company supervises our RBTs, and then Constellation provides other BCBA support within our district, and then has some ABA tutors that are also working within our district. So we can do that part of it.
So we're lucky, because I think we have the personnel chair here. Would it, and again, would you recommend that we have her send it to personnel since you're here? Because-
Yeah, and I can't recall offhand, I know we have tried to put some of these positions in, the school psychologist has been added, and I believe is an open position, just not being filled right now.
Yeah,
They're on the books.
yeah.
I think when you start getting into board certified and licensed, it becomes, where do they fit in the contracts?
Yeah.
And I
in
think that, right,
personnel.
so that's why
So
I think it
it-
goes to personnel.
We could have the conversations, we're not gonna be able to afford them. You know, the pay scales are not gonna be there for versus the private
We're paying them
structure.
anyway, and I think we're paying them higher because we're contracted.
Yeah, exactly, and that's where they're gonna stay. That's a personal opinion, you know.
Yeah.
The school districts, and I think Sarah can back me up on this, is the cities aren't gonna be able to pay what these people are making in the private sector, right? And I think especially a lot of the special services that are required in special ed are gonna be contracted services, because the districts, not just Rochester, districts can't afford to pay. You know, a board-certified behavior analyst probably has $300,000 worth of college debt that they gotta pay off, you know? That,
Yeah, I guess my thing is, do we post it and see if there's anything we do get? And I don't think that's our committee, I think that's,
yeah, and again, I think
Yeah.
we've had these discussions, and
Correct.
we can have them again, and I believe of the bottom three, we do currently have school psychologists, I believe.
correct, we do.
I think it's at least 2 positions.
Yeah, we have 4 positions
Four.
in our budget part of it, but we have not been able to hire for those positions.
Right, they've been posted for at least this past budget
Yeah.
year.
So does this board feel comfortable asking Sarah to bring forward how much it costs to go out for a contract to the personnel committee? Just so that we can see, I mean, it's budget
Go out
season.
to contract or go out to hire.
Just to give us what it costs, what we're spending now, and then let personnel have that discussion of whether or not they want to post the other 2 positions to see if we get anything. We don't get to make that decision, but I think we can ask Sarah to bring that information to personnel. I think it'd be nice to know how much we're paying, because I think Bill White's kind of expensive. He does a good job. I'm
Yeah.
just saying.
Yeah.
All right, so yeah, you could bring that to personnel since he knows now it's coming. You're okay with that, Mr. Mayor?
Well, I think so this committee has to recommend to the board to send to personnel, isn't it?
Yes.
Yes, Sandy?
Yeah, but I keep hearing we can't hire anybody because we can't pay what they pay out in the private sector. Who are they working for? Are they working for the Navy Yard and 6 Hour and all of that? I mean, I don't know what that private sector, are they hiring
They're a private
these folks?
company contracted to the schools. So they're contracting with the government.
Oh, I see,
Okay.
okay.
So not
Okay.
like any other government contractor,
Okay, that's when we say private, we mean
They're
a
not-
private agencies.
private agency.
We don't mean somebody working at the Navy Yard that's,
Right, no, it's a private,
Okay.
it's a private company, and they
It's
go out and market
settling all those
their
people that wanna build
psychologists and
somewhere.
whatnot to the schools.
okay.
We provide these services
So
for,
we would need a motion to move this to personnel with the requested information. Does anybody want to make that motion?
Fine, if you want.
Would you like to?
Sure.
All right, does anybody want to second it?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
What's
Or
the
discussion, sorry, discussion?
just for scribes, so she's asking exactly what the motion is.
So it's to get the information and send it to personnel, like how much we're paying for contracted services for the BCBA, the 8 BCBA's, the 14 RVTs, and we'll add the 4 psychologists, but they're already out there. And then the discussion would be, if we're already paying them that price, how much are we putting it out for bid for? Because, I mean, if we're already paying it, maybe we should have, personnel can have that discussion at that point, so. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right. Motion passes.
All right, before going on, was there any other questions on that last slide? All right, so this is just a quick little summary of support within our district right now. So we have just under 3,800 students enrolled from when I pulled this data 2 days ago. And then we have 911 students currently identified. And then we've had 255 referrals since the beginning of July.
So that makes us just under 24% of our population of students are identified as having an educational disability. So New Hampshire, this data down below is a little bit older, just because it was the most recent that I could find. But New Hampshire's percentage of identified students is 19.06. And then just below that is the United States percentage of identified students is 15%. So again, it is a few years older, so I would imagine that would have changed and probably increased. But it does just show that we do have more students here within Rochester that we are serving through their educational disability. Questions? This part of it here is just, and actually the next two slides are more about sort of where special ed came from. IDEA, or the idea of IDEA, was first passed in 1975 under the title of Education for All Handicapped Children's Act. And the purpose of this was to ensure access to a free and appropriate education for children with disabilities, ensuring that students are educated in a least restrictive environment, and also that parents had a voice in their children's education. The big thing to think about here is IDEA applies to children from birth to high school graduation or when the student turns 22. So within the school district, we're working with students that are children that turn 2.5 up to either graduation or when they turn 22. So we get lots of referrals at the preschool age area from students that are receiving services from early supports and services. Thank you. This is just a quick definition of what special education is. And I won't read through that part of it, but it's just for you to have for some light reading. And then this is who makes up an IEP team. So for an IEP team, we're thinking, and we have to have a parent or a guardian of the child with a disability or that suspected area of disability. So if we have that referral meeting, we want those parents to attend the meetings. We need to have at least one regular education teacher of the child, one special education teacher of the child, an LEA representative, so local educational agency representative. And then again, that's sort of going back to that first page I talked about with the district leadership for special ed. The majority of those people are district LEA representatives, and then our buildings have principals, assistant principals, and coordinators, and then some case managers who are able to LEA some of those meetings. And then when meetings are involving an evaluation, we have to have an individual who is able to interpret the results of those evaluations to make decisions and determine eligibility. And then the parents of the district, the parents are able to bring other individuals who have knowledge of or special expertise with the student. So that could be a parent may want to bring the home counselor with them. That is completely okay. It's nice for us to know just so we know that they're coming.
So we've had it in the past where parents have requested the paraprofessional,
Yeah.
and it's been brought up that the school would say no, but would qualify under that. So where do we stand?
So this is one of those really difficult situations. We talked about a few slides ago that we are short on our para staff kind of thing, where we don't have quite enough paras for all of our open positions. So we have all paras report to special ed teachers, other than, I guess, our RBTs who go to BCPAs. But special ed teachers are able to, they meet with the para educators, they conference with them, they are able to give them directions for moving forward. Many times they're able to give that information and report back to the special ed teacher to be able to move forward and report back onto the meeting. We really want the students, if they have para support in their IEP, we really want that para to be working with the students during that time.
So I guess my concern would be if a parent wants to have the para there, not for the entire meeting.
Yeah.
But there would be no reason for me to think the para, so for example, my son, we invited the para, he had a behavior issue, the para dealt with behavior. The para would come for the first 15 minutes of the meeting and give a recap, if the para was comfortable, which they always were.
Yeah.
So I guess my concern is if a parent is requesting that a para come for a child that has a one-on-one, it wouldn't, I'm not saying the para would have to be there for the entire time, but if the parent is requesting it, I would think that we would try to accommodate that request whenever possible.
Yeah, and I can see, I know as being in the district for the past 10 years, we haven't had that happen. I haven't had paras come to the meetings with me. usually it's me being able to report back on what the para has said, but I can check into other districts too about what they're doing for that.
So it hasn't happened in this district because the other person that was in your position refused to allow it.
Okay.
So it was brought up last year, I believe, where a parent wanted their para to come.
Yeah.
And I guess, again, that para is part of the team, that para does work with that child on especially if it's a one-on-one, every single day, they would add value to that, and the parent has the right to request that person there.
Yeah.
So I would hope that as a district, we would allow them to come, even if it's partially, to have that discussion with the parent.
Yeah, and I can look into seeing what other districts are doing. Typically, when parents request that someone that they're working with outside of the school to coming to the meetings, they don't typically request additional staff within our district to come to those meetings. Because that's up to the LDA to determine who is needed for that meeting to be able to move forward.
It's up to the team. It's
Yeah.
up to the IEP team, not the
Yeah.
LEA, to make the decision for who comes to that meeting.
Yeah.
So again, I understand what you're gonna look for other districts, but I personally don't care what other districts do.
Yeah.
I think if a parent's requesting it, and it's a reliable, it's a request, I don't understand why we wouldn't. So I would hope that that would be the case. Yes, Ms. Shadow?
So the IEP team, they set the team together and sets the parameters and, correct?
Yeah.
Is there anybody that can overrule what has been set, or the team itself only? Can anybody, you got the parameters wherever they set,
Yeah.
can the assistant superintendent come in and say,
Outside the
no?
IEP team?
No.
Exactly,
Yeah, no, not within the district side of it.
okay.
At that point, so special ed has its own rules and regulations that would be sort of around that idea. So if that was, if there was an idea that a parent wasn't agreeing what was happening during the meeting or something along those lines, they have their own avenue to go through
Okay,
for disagreement or that part of it. But there wouldn't be somebody else who'd be able to come in and,
make changes.
yeah, make changes.
Okay.
past
Well,
that.
and just to be clear, no member of the team, once the decisions have been made, can change that IEP without a team meeting.
Yeah.
And so even one
Yes.
member of the
Yeah.
team can't change the IEP unless a team decision has come and there's a decision. Yes, Mr. Kamiri?
So, again, just to kind of go off of Mr. Downs, I think a lot of times, especially talking with some parents, the difference between a 504
Yeah.
and an IEP,
Yeah.
as far as those adjustments or the parents' input and things
Yeah.
like that, and what it takes to actually have an IEP, transfer from a 504 to an IEP.
Yeah,
Because a lot of times, they're in the process maybe, but they don't necessarily have an IEP yet.
right,
They're in a 504
right.
being identified, and the, I don't want to say the roles are different, but
Yeah, yeah.
there's significant differences
Yeah.
between the two.
Yeah.
And parents, sometimes, talking with some, they almost use it interchangeably,
Yeah.
and they don't necessarily see the rule differences,
Yeah.
so, just
That would
kind
be something, Mr. Kamiri, that we could have her address at the next, do you come every month?
I do, but I don't think I'm gonna be here at the next one.
Yeah, so I would say in 2 months' time, when you come, I think
Yeah.
that's good, because you're right, an IEP and a 504, like 504 is depicted by like if you complain, it's Massachusetts, so.
Right, but
an
parents,
Office of Civil
parents
Rights.
start the process in the 504.
No.
In talking with. Well, but, again, I've spoken with some that they're in the special ed process. They actually have a 504,
Yeah.
they're not into the IEP being determined or
Developed, yeah.
whatnot, but,
And that could be,
You don't start with a 504 though,
No.
if your child's determined
I-
and they're getting like a,
yeah, I think what you're mentioning is the idea that you can have a 504 and still be looking at the special ed process, and it's two parallel things. So like I could be a student that has a 504, I get referred then for special ed, I still have my 504 to be able to accommodate and sort of there to support me. And then once I get eligible, then it goes over to the IEP side of it.
but you don't have to have a 504 to be eligible
You
for an
don't.
IEP.
no,
And-
correct, no,
Yes.
but, you're exactly right.
Yeah.
And I, again, it's from some of the parents I'm talking to, that their child is a 504.
Yeah,
But, when they start reading some of the have-tos and must-dos of the IEPs and whatever,
yeah.
there's a skew in that.
Yeah, and I think part of this is the idea, So I know when we met in January for the PD, that was one of the first times that regular ed has really had the opportunity to talk about special ed topics. We haven't really had those opportunities within our school. So I think that this is only going to be fostering more communication between the school district, families, the community about what special education is, what 504s are, because they are different and they are both amazing things that can support students doing amazing things. So we want to be able to share what those different things are. And I imagine that not everybody knows what special ed is in education, so even having this little bit of the presentation is probably a lot of information for some. So it's also really great for us to be able to talk with the community and be able to share that. So it's all things I'm looking forward to doing.
Mr. Ballas, would you?
Pardon? I think you mentioned that we'll talk about 504s more in the future.
Yeah.
But do you manage 504s in the district, or does the counseling department manage 504s?
So I oversee the 504 department and like that sort of like the overseeing side of
Sure.
it, but the counselors do the 504s within the buildings.
Okay.
So I've gone to 504 meetings in this role, and then I also oversee ESOL on top of that too. So.
And I think it would be interesting, so when Mr. Kamiri was saying 504s versus IEP, you know what I mean, like having a 504, I've never heard of a child being identified and starting with a 504, you know what I mean, I've heard them either one or the other, so testing would take place and everything, so I guess that's where
Yeah.
I've never heard of that, so I was a little shocked by that, but I think the difference between why you would qualify for a 504, you know, versus why you would qualify for an IEP, and examples, because I think that'd be, the reason you would qualify for a 504 and the reason you would qualify for an IEP are two completely different things, so when you have an identified child and you do the testing, at that point, they would say, you qualify for this or you qualify for that. So if you qualify for a 504, it would most likely mean you didn't qualify for an IEP. So you know what I mean? Having that information I think would be good because I think the two are completely different.
Yeah.
Yes, Ms.
Yeah, I guess we're responsible from 3 years age on.
Yeah, like 2.5
What,
kind of thing.
well, excuse me, are the 3-year-olds come into the building for their services?
Yeah, so we,
Oh, okay.
so they have preschool, so Reach Preschool is amazing, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely, yes. So, yeah, so it's a really great program. They have lots of students that go through the referral process. So once children reach the age of 2.5 and they receive early supports and services, they then move over to a referral for special education. So then that way they can see if the district is then going to be sort of taking over those things as a student turns 3, and then the process starts there. So special ed has lots of different terminology, has lots of different timelines, has lots of different information, but we back it up that much so then that way we can be able to support students when they turn 3, so we're ready for them. So.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Downs?
So I think this board sometimes forgets about REACH and the amazing program that it offers. We always think about all the other elementary schools, but REACH is an amazing program and amazing staff over at the REACH program.
You are?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
It's all separate.
Shane goes to the REACH program.
So earlier, when we were talking about special education, there was a little definition on there about what special design instruction is, and really that's the idea of what special ed can be for students, and that's the being able to teach those goals. So when you're looking at that definition of special design instruction, it's lots of legal terms because it came from IDEA. So what I just wanted to do here was just give some examples of what special design instruction may look like for students in our in our district. This isn't any particular student, this is just one that I was typing away when I was getting the presentation ready. So a student has a goal in reading to work on phonological awareness. So that student may have supplemental instruction in reading 3 times a week for 30 minutes. It could be even more than that, it could be less than that depending on the student's needs. Another student has a goal for self-regulating their behaviors. That service may be special design instruction for self-regulation 2 times a day of 15 minutes. And then I put down below, and this sort of goes to what we were talking about earlier, this is just an example for you guys to see. The IEP team determines what services that the student needs due to their unique needs. So it's not one of these prescribed things saying that someone comes in with a reading disability, oh, they're gonna get 2 times a week of 30 minutes. It will differ on who that student. So. This is just sort of talking about the overview here. So it talks about the federal requirements, which we talked about through IDEA. Then we have the state requirements through the New Hampshire DOE. And I put some links in there for the rules for the education of children with disabilities, a parent guide for the rules, and then also the New Hampshire procedural safeguards, which I was really excited for. In November, they updated for the first time in a little over 5 years. So it was really great the next day when I was able to be like, hey, these are new for you. And then down below we have the local requirements, so that's what us within the Rochester School District. So I was going through, so understood.org is this really great resource for lots of different people. I use it for teachers, I use it for paras, I think it's fantastic for parents, it's great for families, it's really great for everybody, and then looking to see sort of what an IEP was in the end. So I really like this definition of it, so I wanted to include it. But an IEP is a map that lays out a program of special education instruction, supports, and services kids need to make progress and thrive in school. So I thought it was a really nice way of doing it. Before I get on to the next slide, that talks about what it actually looks like. IEPs can be really anywhere between 12, 14 pages up into the 30s. It really depends on the student, their needs, how old they are, because you can see on there that there are some parts of it that don't really even get added into the IEP till that student's about to turn 13 for those 14, for those transition services. So the beginning's always the same. It has a front page which has student information, parent information. It talks about the student's disabilities, and then it goes into lots of different areas. And it can be difficult when going through it, especially seeing it for the first time, because there's lots of information in the IEPs. But what we always do is we start out with student strengths, because we know that we're sitting there, we're going to be talking about students' weaknesses and areas of difficulty for them. So we're going to start out with those strengths, because that's what we're always going to go back to. So we're always going to talk about what their strengths are, so then that way, and then these are the areas of weakness, and these are how we're going to help them. But these are those strengths, because they're not defined by their disadvantages. So. Services, the IEP team determines what services and support a student needs to access their FAPE, and then the district then determines the funding for these services and supports. So this is just a big thing when looking at a student that may have some self-regulation, different areas there, that needs that BCBA, so that's where then we come in to look to see about finding that BCBA support for that child. This was just a little intro, in my intro, for the snapshots, so the quarterly reports that I'll do. So I'll talk about the total number of students that our district is servicing for students with special education. I'll talk about the students that are in our charter schools and then private schools, because we do have some of those, and we are, again, the district of liability for those children. Then I'll also talk about the total number of students that are out of district, including those students who've been removed from our district due to DHHS, DCYF, and then also the courts. And then also just additional timely information that's really great for you guys to know, because it's hot topics in the special ed world. And then just a quick little thank you for having me tonight to talk about these different areas. And I know special ed can be really overwhelming. I know I talk really fast. It is just one of those things that I really enjoy, and it is a passion of mine to be able to help students, and especially help students here in the Rochester School District. So, thank you. Any questions?
Questions or comments? Is there any, so I think it'd be interesting, especially after what was kind of discussed, to have the conversation about 504s and IEPs. Is there anything that anybody else would like her to address in the district?
Not yet, but
All right,
soon.
well, you let me know.
I'm overwhelmed
I
already.
appreciate these because I think they're important, and I'm hoping that the public will hear it as well, because these meetings get posted, so I think it's really informative for the board. Yes, Mr. Downs?
So I know it's not something you address, but I know discipline in our district right now is not consistent and is very frustrating. So I know it's something I plan on reviewing at the board level on, to get us consistent. I don't think don't wanna take the decision out of the principal's hands, but at a point, we're coming to a point where all of us board members hear a lot of stuff where there's no discipline for these students. And a lot of this, what gets me more frustrated is we have kids that are there learning, not causing a chaos at school and doing what they need to do, and we're not thinking about those students. We're constantly worrying about this student that's constantly causing chaos and making this class evacuate. And we need to start thinking about the students that want to learn. And I know it's something that I plan on addressing eventually.
So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Downs, I think what he's saying is if a student with a disability causes something that a typical student would get disciplined for, there's what's called a manifestation of their disability. And I think maybe that should be addressed. I think it would be something that we'd want to explain and kind of give some examples too.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's something that you're prepared to discuss tonight or if we want to discuss that later. But I think people just assume that because you're a student with a disability, you're getting away with everything, which
Oh, yeah.
we know is not.
No.
Now, if you cause harm or you do something that's because of your disability that you can't control, you can't really be held liable like a, you know what I mean, like a typical student. But if you're doing something that is not a cause from your disability, I think what Mr. Downs is saying is you should be held to the same standard that somebody else would be. Did I?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's just,
So I don't know if you're prepared to kind of go over it, or if you want to bring it up late, like when you come back. But I think that's the concern is,
Okay,
why don't we just do that? We'll plan on,
okay.
yeah, we don't want to surprise you and have you, like, we'd like you to be prepared when you say it, but I think that's the big
Yes, and I
thing.
love special ed stuff, so I'm ready, but I think it would also be okay for us to bring it up in April
Yeah,
when I'm back. Yeah.
sounds good.
So just, so I'm clear, so just sort of like the manifestation procedure kind of thing, and what a manifestation is, where it comes into play when we would do one.
yeah, and some examples of it, you know,
Okay.
little Johnny does this, and this is the reason for his disability, this is why,
Well, just- I'm not for a reflection sheet either. I think that's a waste of our time. I will say that.
let him present it.
I know, I know what the reflection sheets are, and I just,
If you want to present a
I'm
reflection
sorry,
sheet,
I
you
just-
present a reflection sheet. Mr. Bellows,
I,
your
what I
hand
said,
raised.
ready?
I think
No, I didn't have a question.
kind of maybe overlaps a little bit with what Mr. Downs was saying, but I wonder if at some point in the future you could articulate how you think our staffing challenges are also creating
Sure.
issues. I know, I believe anyways, it could have been wrong, but knocking on doors and hearing people talking about the struggles that maybe their kids had in accessing their services, and a lot of times in the back of my mind, I'm like, that sounds like a staffing, like you're short-staffed, and that's why it looks this way. But I could be wrong, you'll know better than me, but I'd love to hear more about that, so
Yeah.
with personnel, we can try to figure out how we address that.
I agree. I think our staff are burnt
So I
out.
think maybe bring that up in April instead of the 504 verses, and then you can bring the next.
I am ready.
I don't want you to, right, but I
You can have
don't
a-
think everybody wants to be here for an hour either, so.
No, really? Okay.
I would want to. But I mean, I
No,
also
I
don't
know.
want to put too much work on you. I know you're
Yeah.
short-staffed, as we clearly see. All right, any other discussion? Sorry, I have to get to my agenda. I see the things to sign.
Thank you, everyone.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Incident reports.
I just prepared the same type of report that I had done previously. I brought this, I don't remember now, sometime after November, so the committee meets, I think it's quarterly. And so you have the breakdown of incidents from November 3rd to January 25th. I just added that. And then you have the last quarter's data right underneath it, just for comparison.
So, I guess we're talking about having the discipline committee back. So, we're talking about disciplines that would go to that level. So this doesn't really give us a lot of what that level would be. Does that make sense, Shane? I know that it's been a huge thing for you. Do you want to comment?
About discipline, when we get into that again?
I think
There's not enough of it. That's
Oh,
what-
this is just
I-
incidents,
so
so yeah,
what
I feel
I
like incidents
want-
and discipline should kind of follow along.
I want accountability, and I don't think there's enough accountability in our district. So yes,
Accountability by whom?
huh?
By whom?
Students.
Accountability by the kids or by-
But I think it starts at home, but then
Well,
when
I
it's
do
in the
too,
school.
and I'd like to know
but
how
then-
we
but then
control
it-
that.
It comes into the school, and I just don't think, I think some people are afraid to call the parent, because the parent comes down, flying down to the school, all mad. So like, oh, we'll just throw them in this room with this teacher for
My kid
right
wouldn't
now,
do
so we
that.
don't gotta call the parent. Or it's just parents gotta take accountability, principals gotta take accountability.
You know, those words are easier
And
than,
consequences.
All right,
there needs to
somebody
be-
has their hand raised.
There needs to be consequences, and I don't think we have consequences in our school program.
Yes.
Shane, I would not disagree with you at all, and I think the staff, the teachers, have to feel that their administrators support them in making those decisions, and the administrators have to feel that their higher administration supports them. Because if the administrators are able to deal with those conversations with the parents and know that somebody has their back in making those calls, I think we can get control. I know we can get control of this because I've witnessed it and I've seen it firsthand.
I agree.
So I think that's where it all begins, is a trust amongst the staff and the administration, and then the administration having the staff's back to be able to make those right calls.
And I think that starts with the discipline committee, because we need to be made aware. So this is great, but we're hearing different things from parents that are complaining. So I think I talked to you about one incident that I had gotten a phone call about that I don't want to put on public, but that's a huge issue if a student is putting their hands on a staff, or if, and we're hearing it, so we're not blind to that. And I understand that this can't be brought to a public meeting, but this doesn't really depict when students are putting their hands on staff. And I think exactly what Mr. White said and exactly what Sandy said, like, parents should be disciplining their kids, but when they're not, and those kids come into the building, there needs to be some kind of accountability. And I agree, Sandy, I don't think we send them home. They're allowed to have a free and appropriate public education. But when you're also putting your hands on a staff member, there has to be some kind of recourse. So I don't think
that's
it's.
an easy one though, that's an easy one.
Correct.
We
but
all
right.
agree on that one.
But I'm saying, it doesn't seem as though staff is feeling as though that's being handled correctly. So I personally think it comes back to having that discipline committee, because I think what I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, it sounds like the principal is not handling his job properly.
Well, I guess that's why if we had the discipline committee and they had to come before this board, and it wouldn't be the entire, I think last time it was a board of 3, and we would ask, the teacher would come and say this is what or the principal would come and say this is what happened and this is what we recommend, and then we could push back and say how do we support that? And I think that's the big thing, this board is not being made aware of the discipline, so we don't really know. And you're right, that's a high-end one, and there's all those in between that we have to say how do we support the staff in doing it? Is it training? Is it the child needs to, is the parent needs to come in and have a conversation? Is it, I think there's a lot of in between, but I really feel like we need our discipline committee back. So, was it discussed? Oh no, it's discussed in policy, sorry. But I think that's the big issue, because these right here don't really say a lot, and I understand you can't put a lot of information in this, but this doesn't really give us a lot. I mean, when you look at it, does it give you what you want?
Well, it gives me an idea where our issues are in, obviously, the elementary schools. You see where most of the incidents are happening, where the behavior is in the elementary schools. In middle schools, we know that's where our bullying is, that's where our highest bullying numbers are. Then once you get to high school, you kind of figure out where you're going, and everything kind of dies down. But I think behavior issues are in the elementary schools, and I honestly think that the consequences are inconsistent.
Did you?
No, I'm just saying that throwing the kid out of school does not solve the problem.
I completely agree with that, but the way in which it's working now, we're not really doing anything. So I think there is an there is something in the middle that you can do, and you don't want it to get to that level, but at some point you have to say you're interrupting somebody else's education. And if it's going to a different location and maybe an in-school suspension, I don't know, but.
Whatever happened to that? In-school suspensions used to work great.
But I think we
Great for
need
me.
to, we don't know what the incidences are because we don't really get a lot from this. So again, I think having that, when we discuss that, I think that's where I would advocate for, Mr. Downs.
I understand you don't want kids out of school, but some of these kids are causing so much chaos that they're not allowing the other students to learn. And hold on, Sandy, but then you want to send in-school suspension, so now you're gonna take one staff member, we're already short, to stay with one student all day long. When
Well,
that staff's
I'm not
could
sure
be
that's the
taking-
appropriate.
But let me finish.
answer.
So, do an in-school suspension, but sometimes you send them home because you need to make it an inconvenience for the parents,
It
so
doesn't make
they
it
start
inconvenient. That's
holding
the
them
problem. It doesn't
accountable.
make it inconvenient for those kinds of parents. That's the problem.
But again, I think sometimes, I don't know, the information I feel like doesn't really give me a clear picture of, it says incidents, but I wanna know
No,
what
what
those
the
incidents,
No.
you know what I mean? And I
Well,
think it's
incidents.
behaviors or, yeah.
I think you did share one with us where it was a little more, it wasn't giving out personal information, but it did give us a little more info with like, I think it was
Weapons.
weapons, like that one.
I like that one better.
If we
Okay.
can.
I thought this was the one you wanted, but I can go back.
We like the other one.
Okay.
Thank you.
Matrix for that.
And I think it's an issue of, our staff are saying that kids are putting hands on staff, I'm not saying it's a lot, but I'm saying that's an issue, because we pay them and that's 100% unacceptable. Yes, Mr. White.
That puts the staff in a very difficult position.
Correct.
Because if the staff then defends themselves and puts their hands on the student, now the staff member is in a really bad position.
Correct.
So.
So we
gotta
have to
get that
nip it
under
before it
control.
gets to that.
Really.
Yep. Mr. Bellows?
It also gets staff like polishing up their resumes when they feel like nothing's being done about it.
Yep.
And we're not in a position to continue to lose staff because.
Correct.
But again, I agree with Sandy. I don't think the answer is you kick them out.
Not
I
always.
think there's instances where you have to say, come pick up your child, your child is caused, I think there are instances where that's there. But I think you build up to that. I don't think you start there, Sandy. So I don't think Mr. Downs is saying that either. I think he's saying when it's a major, you know, if a staff teacher put their hands on somebody else, we'd have a fit. So when a student does it, it's still, we have to set that level of, it's unacceptable. And I think it is an inconvenience on some parents, and I think some parents are gonna have to deal with it, and I think that's when, you know, starts that ball rolling of SRO and everything else, but
Some parents are gonna leave that
I
kid
don't
home
think-
alone to watch television and whatever he
right,
wants to
and
do
I don't think
with it.
Mr. Downs wants that. I think what he's saying is, when you're causing a safety for our staff, we also have to look out for them.
I will,
Are there
Hold on,
like
Sadie.
5 incidences in every building every day?
I will
mean-
say, I want it black and white. A student touches a staff member, they're gone. That should be black and white. There's no excuse for it at all. That's black and white.
There certainly
You
isn't
touch
at
a
the high
sta-
school
if you
level.
tou-
I'm not
You
sure
touch
what
a
the
staff
elementary
member
level.
deliberately, not on accident, you touch a staff member, you hit a staff member, you're out of school. I want that black and
Well,
white.
depends what grade level you're talking about.
And this is a
It's
policy
different.
issue, so we're gonna let it go to policy, so I appreciate, but I'm just saying, I think when we're talking about special ed, that would be really good to define. So I appreciate that. I'm so glad we have these heated discussions, because it just lets me know where y'all are at, and I appreciate it, but we're moving on. And I lost my paper, so hold on. So 5-year, we have not had a 5-year meeting. Who is our 5-year liaison? Is it Kelly? So, Ms. Allen, you are, I believe you are the special services liaison for 5 years, so you will be reporting on that when it happens. I believe they're meeting quarterly. Public comment? I know, I see nobody either, I'm just giving an option.
Don't call
I'm
Russ
not
once.
blind, so seeing no public comment, we can close public comment. I'll leave it open for the remainder. I do think that we need to change, especially for, I would like public comment to the front. It's legally, we're supposed to have it for 30 minutes. I will leave it open, but if you could, at least for mine, put public comment at the beginning, because I will make sure it stays on for 30 minutes.
I think we're supposed to talk about that.
It's my committee, so put it in the front. Thank you. you guys can do your committee, I'm following the law, so I don't care.
Well, the discussion, yeah, there's gonna be discussion on it, but I
Yeah.
don't think they have it on there.
So the budget. I know. Anybody have any issues or any concerns that they wanna bring up?
So,
Did you say hem and haw?
no,
You did. Yes, Mr. Downs?
the budget, like, athletics, when Mr. Hebert comes with his budget, do you guys have to like move it around? Does he ask? Because I remember last year, we had to find money, and we had actually, it turned into quite, with the wrestling mats. We ended up having to just pretty much come forward with paying for half of those because the boosters paid for the rest of them. And those wrestling mats that they are wrestling on were over 20 years old. So it doesn't seem like he's coming forward, and we're not moving his budget, and we're not, I know in athletics, stuff needs to be replaced. And doesn't seem, I know we're already, 1.2 million over the budget, so looking to cut it, but I would like to know from Mr. Hebert if there was anything that he needs this year that, so I think we can come back, next meeting and just give us an update, is there anything that
Can we ask him
he
to
needs?
come?
Oh, yeah, actually, or ask him to come while we're approved, is there something that he's gonna need that maybe he didn't put on here, or? Because we gave, music, uniforms, the music now asks for new instruments, what about stuff for the athletics, what do we need there?
Sandy, did you have something? I'm sorry.
No, I'm just thinking about the fence around all the property. I can't think of a bigger joke than that. When we've got a budget like ours that has so many needs in it, I think replacing the chain link fence all around the property is just,
Well, I think that's the city.
No.
With that as well.
well, it isn't gonna be the city's responsibility. We're fencing in our property.
Did you give us a breakdown, Sam? I didn't go through the whole packet, so I apologize, but when it says dues and fees, the 49,000, did you already give us a breakdown of
It's
that?
all in that packet.
So you're saying I have my reading to do? Way to say that, Sam. I mean, I don't want to increase the budget, but I do think that we need to look at it because, I mean, we are a D1 athletic, and during election, those students came up and had a lot of requests for the athletic department, and I don't think that we pay our athletic, I mean, we just increased the band, I think we have to look at it all the way around, so while I don't want to increase our budget, I also think that at least it's something that should be a discussion.
Well, it seems to me the idea of not increasing the athletic budget is to compare it with special services, to compare it with some of the other departments. I mean, and when you see the needs at libraries, when you see the needs in the other departments, it's pretty hard to say, well, geez, let's put up a new fence, you know?
But that can't
Right.
come out of the athletic.
All right, raise your hand.
Sorry.
So, but the difference, I know, I get to go first because it's my chair. I think the difference is though, with the librarian, if Mrs. Sturdivant needs books and we have extra money, we can work with that if we have extra money at the end of the year. We can't get a chain link fence, so it has to be something that's in the budget. I agree with you, Sandy, it needs to be fixed, but it's not special services, so that's not our department. But I think when you're looking at like our staff that doesn't make enough money and like helps out and, you know what I mean, and
Right.
does, like, we reached out, what was it, the girls softball, what was it, there was a girls basketball team or something, we couldn't even find a coach. We didn't pay them enough. These kids need to be able to have a coach that's worthwhile, and those coaches need to be
outside
paid.
lights this year.
Outside life, Sandy, I'll put it on my list. All right, Mr. Downs, you had your hand raised?
I don't remember.
That's perfect. That's how I'm gonna do it from now on. No, I'm just kidding. Listen, he's yelled at me enough times, payback. Anybody else have anything that they wanna add for the budget? Did you? Oh, you just kind of moved really quickly, and I was like, all right, this is something you want. All right, the only other thing we would have is other. Does anybody have any other?
Can I maybe just put something on our radar in the future? And maybe this has already been discussed and I just get to do some reading, but the enrollment figures, I suspect when Nancy Loud was closed, that kind of skewed some of the numbers at Chamberlain. But it's right next to McClellan, I hate to pick on it, but just because they're visual, I'm looking at page number 6 in our packet. You see like Grade 1 at McCollin has 4 teachers and 48 kids, and Chamberlain has 50 kids and 3 teachers.
Are you
And
looking
that's
at
just
special
like,
services?
Sounds fair.
yeah, it's the enrollment, it was in the enrollment data. Again, on page 6.
Oh, we're on the budget right now. Oh, you're on.
I'm sorry, we're not,
No,
right?
you're right.
And I'm just talking about the
Okay.
future, we don't need to discuss it now, but with the new school opening up, and at a certain point, there's gonna have to be conversations about redistricting and how that phases in. And so you already see some areas where there's some, some really large class sizes at one school and really small at another school. How is that all gonna work, and what's the timeline for that?
So-
Have discussions already been had?
So once the building is at its level, I know Shane is waving his hand, hopefully he's gonna forget what he had to say, but once, that will be discussed once the building's ready to be occupied, and there will be a redistricting, yes, Mr.?
So I know when Nancy Loud, we closed Nancy Loud, we ended up moving everyone into Chamberlain, which I was not for, because Chamberlain is one of our more difficult schools, so I do think that that needs to be addressed or looked into next school year, if we can, because if you look at those class sizes compared to McClellan, the next biggest elementary school, it's a lot different. It's the staff at Chamberlain have their hands full compared to us. I don't know if we really used our head very well when we did that. So.
Allison, can we get a feel or a pulse for Chamberlain with having all that and seeing if there's any supports or anything that we can provide to them? Because you're right, Shane, we did move it, it's been,
I know we sent all that
it's
stuff.
been over
that way
5
as
months,
well.
I think is there something that, how's the pulse at Chamberlain, how is it going, and is there anything that we kind of need, just an update on it? Because I do think that we did add a lot, and I don't think that we really had the forethought of checking in, so good for Shane. Hurts to say.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Kamari.
So on that topic, I mean, I'm looking at the numbers for February. You're comparing McClellan and Chamberlain?
I just
Is
picked
that-
those two, because I know you can look in different grade levels and see.
Well, right,
it
and
flipped
going through,
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
there's some disparity between them, but they're not, I wouldn't, I mean, the largest is, looks like a second, grade 2. One of the classes is 20 and one is 12. But, I mean, they're not,
That's 75%.
But I think Mr. Kamari.
well,
Sorry, hold on.
that's the biggest one. I'm gonna, yeah, but, I mean, they're not, you get 17 at William Allen, 19, 15. I mean, that, across the district.
Yes.
I think our goal is 20 to 24 is what our goal is. No more than in a classroom.
State, right, 30 is the state?
Yeah, and I think
Right.
there's our policy.
Our policy is around 24, if I
Yeah.
believe. So we're within our our range that we're trying to, and I don't disagree, and those numbers are going to get changed, but I don't want to give the representation or make it represented as we've got these overcrowded classrooms because we closed Nancy Loud, or teachers are, overwhelmed with students, right? I mean, they're not so askew that we're throwing the earth off kilter here.
But aren't they? Because when you look at grade 1, there's 4 classes to equal 48 students, and in Chamberlain, there's 3 classes to equal 50 students. So you have 1 extra class and 2 less students. So I mean, that is a huge concern. And then when you look at the next grade level, you have 4 classes at McClellan to equal 51 students, and you have 3 classes at Chamberlain to equal 55.
And you have 3 classes at William Allen at total 53?
Right, I was comparing the 2 that was already in comparison.
And I'm saying, let's not just read half the paragraph. Read the whole paragraph, meaning look at the whole district. So that's my caution, is I get it. We put 100 students into McClellan. I get that. But we're not, let's look at William Allen numbers and compare them. All right, the whole picture.
Sure.
Well, Mr. White has his, go
I
ahead.
think also when we're looking at classrooms like that, so if one's got 20 and one's got 12, and Sarah, this would be a perfect question for you. I'm assuming when those classes are put together, we're looking at IEPs and all that type of information. So there may be a class with 12 kids, but there may be a lot more individualized learning goals in that classroom versus a classroom with 20.
Yeah, there could be, I mean, that is something that we look at when we're sort of putting classes together.
Thank you.
Mr. Bellows?
Yeah, I just want to make sure that my question was more thinking district-wide. I happen to pick those two schools, but we're going to have that conversation at a certain point with the new building open up. We're going to have to be shifting the lines and asking some families to move to schools, and the sooner we start to think about how we're going to do that, probably the easier it's going to be.
All right, any other? Would there be a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
You're not, first of all, you're not on this committee,
Oh,
so I
that's right.
appreciate you.
Make a motion to adjourn.
So Kelly's making the motion to adjourn, would anybody, Mr. Cormier's making the second, thank you very much, Mr. Downs.
Sorry.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Shane, I'll adjourn.